Welcome to yet another edition of the High School Football Roundup podcast on the Southwest Georgia Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Walter Johnson, and have a lot of things to talk about on tonight, Tuesday, September 5th, 2017, and not a whole lot of time to waste. So let's get started and wrapping up this what was a busy Labor Day weekend, starting with the Lee County Trojans in Lee County now 3-0 after winning easily over Hardaway out of Columbus, Georgia, 47-6, the final score up in Leesburg last Friday. And next up for the Trojans from Leesburg, yet another home game against Americus Sumter. And Americus Sumter won their first game of the season as they defeated Dooley County at home 33-14, the final score. And, that was in Americus. And the Panthers will make the short trip down U.S. Highway 19 to face Americus Sumter. To face Lee County, I should say. And Eric Soliday and his Chargers will try to get above first 500 for the first time this season, but it won't be an easy task. And Lee County's been steam since their come from behind win over Mary Persons to start the season at the Corky Kell Kickoff Classic in Macon back on August 17th. Lee County's won back-to-back games, outscoring their last two opponents, Bainbridge and Hardaway, by the score of 85-19. And so Lee County, and I really thought Lee County was going to be the number one team in the state Class 6A after the last year's state runners-up. The Tucker Tigers fell to Colquitt County 35-21 last week, but that proved to not be the case. And Lee County is still at number 2 in Class 6A, according to the Georgia High School Football Daily Rankings, which are released every Monday at ghsfdaily.com. And Lee County led 40-0 at halftime and just pretty much was in cruise control from there. Quarterback Jace Orndorff finished 8 out of 9 in passing, 155 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even had a 31-yard touchdown run. And running back Nico Cruz finished with 9 carries for 128 yards, 9 rushes for 128 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tay Mayo had 2 receptions and returned 100 yards. And Lee County held Hardaway to 57 yards for the first 3 quarters and 112 for the entire game. Amazing, tremendous stuff for Lee County. 47-6, Lee County beat Hardaway. And some other action closer to home. And for some other local teams. And the Monroe Tornadoes fell on the road to the Thomasville Bulldogs. And the Bulldogs won easily 45-7 over the Tornadoes. Yes, and quarterback J.T. Rice finished 18 out of 27 passing for a school record 428 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that followed Carl Blackmore. Carl Blackmore. And sorry about that. Carl Blackmore kicked a school record 57-yard field goal against Thomas County Central in the week before. And this week, JT Rice completed 18 out of 27 passes for a school record 420 yards, 4 touchdowns. And the old record was 352. And sophomore wide receiver Kevin Cochran had 5 catches for just over 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Georgia Tech commit Charlie Thomas caught 2 passes, I should say, for 84 yards and a touchdown. Scored a rushing touchdown. And as for Monroe, I mean, really not much to say, except that the Tornadoes really took it on the chin down there in Thomasville. I mean, Thomasville just absolutely trounced Monroe, and it doesn't get any easier for the Tornadoes. And the Tornadoes have a short turnaround and host Thomas County Central next week. And at Humil Stadium in Albany, the Darty Trojans, for the second time in 3 games, and lost a heartbreaker in the final seconds. And this time they lose to Berrien in a 14-7 the final score last Friday. And there was no score, and it was a scoreless tie, 0-0, 0-0 at the half. And then it remained scoreless until late in the third quarter. And Berrien scored a touchdown with about 96 seconds to play in the third quarter, and the extra point was no good. And Berrien led 6-0, and then Darty scored its only points of the contest with about 12 seconds to play in the third quarter. Scored a touchdown, made the extra point, and Darty led 7-6 going into the fourth quarter, and the score would stay that way until 1:30 to play, and Berrien scored a touchdown and added a 2-point conversion in the closing seconds, and Darty had one last chance to at least force overtime, but they turned it over on an interception, and Berrien ran out the clock from there, and Darty loses 14-7. And they'll face Westover, and the Patriots face Westover this week at Humil Stadium. And the Patriots are off in the Friday night game. And the Patriots were off last week after losing 21-6 to Monroe. And also you had the Cairo syrup makers and handing the Thomas County Central Yellow Jackets 24-0. And like I said, I mean, it's not going to get any easier for Monroe facing the Thomas County Central team that's very tough despite their 1-2 record. And this is a Yellow Jackets team that won the GHSA Region 1 5A championship last year. Finished the 2016 campaign at 8-4 and fell in the second round of the state playoffs in Class 5A. And so Monroe's already into the toughest part of their schedule, and up to this point. And then after Thomas County Central, Monroe and the Tornadoes will have a bye week before making back-to-back road trips to face GHSA Region 1AA foes at Brooks County on September 22nd, and as well as at Berrien on the 29th of September. And so Monroe's already in the toughest part of their schedule right now, the non-region portion of their schedule. And so I'm going to move on to some top performances. Moving on to, and before we even get to that top performances, and how about some a quick look at some other final scores of interest here around Southwest Georgia in the Southwest Georgia Network coverage area. I already mentioned Cairo shutting out Thomas County Central 24-0. And then Thomas County Central's been outscored 65-7 in their last two games. And the Yellow Jackets have taken it on the chin in these last couple of weeks. And as for the Serve Makers, they bounced back from a tough season opening, trouncing by Thomasville in Thomasville 37-8. And the Serve Makers pitch a shutout. And also, the Fitzgerald Purple Hurricanes and lose for the second time in three contests by 3 points. And they just over in their season opener on August 18th, Fitzgerald fell to Hateville Charter in Hateville, Georgia, just south of Atlanta, on a blocked field goal as time expired, 25-22. And this time, the Purple Hurricanes go down to the coast, the Georgia coast, right near the Florida border, to face the Cats from the coast in Camden County. And it was the Camden County Wildcats, and holding on for a 24-21 victory. And Fitzgerald will face Macon County next week. And Macon County's coming off a tough loss of its own, losing to Irwin County 36-28. And Crisp County now 3-0 after shutting out Turner County 27-0. The final score. And the Cougars from Cordele, Georgia, improving to 3-0. Looks like Crisp County is the team to beat at this point in GHSA Region 1 AAA. And the Early County Bobcats got their first win under new head coach Joel Harvin, as the Bobcats edged Seminole County 27-26. And Joel Harvin, with a V, replaced Trey Wolf as the Bobcats head coach. And Wolf decided to step down at the end of the last season. And the Bobcats were just 8-1 last season. And ironically, their only win came against the now defunct Albany High School in their final game of the season. And that's a big win for Early County. And knocking off their next door neighbors from Seminole County in the extreme southwestern corner of the state. And I'll mention Irwin County and getting by Macon County, high scoring game there. And Mitchell County, and less than a week after losing in the closing seconds, head home to Doherty 18-14, and cracked the win column for the first time this season as they stomped Stewart County 47-0, the final score. And Mitchell County sitting at 1-1 on the season. And Pelham pounded Terrell County to open GHSA Region 1 single A play, 48-0, the final score there. And Pelham has now won back-to-back games. And Chattahoochee County, Casita, Georgia, just south of Columbus. And much of that county is filled with Fort. Much of that in Fort Benning, and takes up much of that county. And in any case, Chattahoochee County pitched a shutout win over Baconton in northern Mitchell County, 12-0, the final score there. And you see on Thursday night, and the Valdosta Wildcats fell to 1-2 after losing to Wayne County 23-13. That was the final score there. And Valdosta falls to 1-2 on the season. And first time, and who would have thunk it? Straight out of who would have thunk it category. Who would have thought that the defending GHSA Class 6A champion Valdosta Wildcats would find themselves at 1-2, find themselves with a losing record after just 3 games, but that's exactly what happened in Houston County at 0-3 under a new head coach. And they lose to Eagles Landing 27-7, and Coffee and wins the Battle of Southeast Georgia over Ware County 21-14. And the Coffee Trojans out of Douglas, Georgia, just like the Lee County Trojans, are undefeated at 3-0. And obviously there's a long way to go. But Coffee, obviously there's a long way to go before those two teams face each other, and they still have to face like Houston County and north side of Warner Robins, and of course Valdosta before those two teams score off to wrap up the regular season. But it wouldn't surprise me if both those teams entered the game undefeated, and Lee County coming in at number 2, Coffee at number 3. And those two teams could be on a potential collision course, but there's still a long way to go before those two teams finally clash, and which would be the final week of the regular season. In north side of Warner Robins, won back-to-back games since opening the season with an upset loss to Warner Robins. And the Demons are now 3-0. And the main difference for Warner Robins is quarterback Dylan Fromm, the younger twin brother of former Houston County quarterback Jake Fromm, who's now at the University of Georgia. And Dylan Fromm completed 30 out of 40 passes for 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. And in the Demons' 38-35 victory over Peach County last week. And Warner Robins is off this week. And ironically, their next game will be on Friday, September 15th at Houston County. And Dylan and twin brother Tyler will be facing their former team on September 15th. And Houston County is really struggling right now. And another game of interest that I find in Tift County, 27-7 winner over Glen Academy, and the Blue Devils going to 3-0 with that win. And a game that could impact the race in as far as playoff berths in GHSA Class Single A Public in Wilcox County, outlasting Hawkinsville. Kind of a low-scoring game, 18-13, Wilcox County with the victory. And they're still kind of early. And unlike the higher classification teams, and the top final 24 teams, they're in the power rankings, and Class Single A Public advanced to the state playoffs. And how about the Worth County Rams? 0-3 already on the season after losing 27-14 the Veterans out of Kathleen, Georgia, and the Warhawks. And the Veterans Warhawks out of Kathleen, Georgia, in Houston County, kind of sandwiched right in between Warner Robins, Perry, and Fort Valley, And Kathleen is much closer to Perry than it is to Warner Robins. And Veterans competes in GHSA Region 1-5A. And Warner Robins is not too far from Veterans. Warner Robins High School. And as mentioned earlier, Warner Robins looks like the team to beat in Region 1-5A at this point. And how about Deerfield Windsor in the GI? When mentioned the GISA, and the Knights go to 2-1 after trouncing Terrell Academy up in Dawson, 35-3 the final score. And it'll be interesting to see where Deerfield Windsor goes. And as far as GISA Region 3 AAA. And now we can move on to the top performances and among area teams. And Bainbridge running back Damian Pierce rushed for 313 yards and 5 touchdowns on 27 rushes. Carried the ball 27 times in a 43-33 win over Lincoln to Tallahassee, Florida. And it was the Bearcats' first win of the season. And Colquitt County quarterback Stephen Krajewski completed 22 out of 26 passes for just over 240 yards and 3 touchdowns. As the Packers knocked off the number 1 team in Class 6A and the Tucker Tigers in the Metro Atlanta area, DeKalb County, 35-21. And in the third quarter, Krajewski was a perfect 13 out of 13. And during which he drove his team to 3 straight touchdowns. And Colquitt County was behind 14-7 at the half, but the Packers pretty much dominated that second half. I'm not sure about domination, but they did. But the Colquitt County did do well enough in that second half. And where they could get the victory, and remain undefeated. And how about Thomasville quarterback JT Rice? And as mentioned earlier in the podcast, he finished 18 out of 27 passing for the school record, 428 yards, 4 touchdowns. And the Bulldogs' victory over Monroe, 45-7. And quarterback and some other performances of interest. And quarterback DJ Lundy from Irwin County rushed for 190 yards and 4 touchdowns on 30 carries, 30 attempts. And I'm sure Irwin County needed all 30 of those rushing attempts. And Irwin County managed to pull out a 36-28 win over Macon County. And defensive back Tay Mayo from Lee County had 2 interceptions and returning 100 yards for a pick 6. And they're convincing 47-6 victory over Hardaway. And according to the GHSF Daily, at GHSF Georgia High School Football Daily email newsletter at ghsfdaily.com. And this was the second straight game in which Mayo intercepted 2 passes and returned at least one of those for a pick 6. And so now we're going to move on to some of the top games. What I think some of the games of interest here in Southwest Georgia. And for the week of September 9th, 2017, probably start here in Albany at Humil Stadium. And Thursday night game in the Monroe Tornadoes. And coming off a tough test, just an absolute trouncing down in Thomasville by the Bulldogs, 45-7 the final score last week. And then and the Tornadoes have a short turnaround, facing Thomas County Central, and Yellow Jackets coming off of a shutout loss at home to arch rival Cairo. And as mentioned earlier, and the Yellow Jackets have been outscored 65-7 in their last two games. 41-7 loss at home to Thomasville in last week, and being blanked by Cairo at the Jackets Nest. And Thomas County Central will travel to Valdosta after the Monroe game on September 15th. And weather permitting, and I hope to get to that briefly. And before we wrap up this program. And Monroe plays host to Thomas County Central at Humil Stadium on Thursday, September 7th. And this will be one of those, and it'll be one of those measuring stick games for sure for both teams, especially for the Tornadoes. And then the Friday night game at Humil Stadium, and pits Westover and against Doherty. And the Patriots out of Class 4A had a week off after losing to Monroe 21-6 at Humil Stadium on August 25th. And they had that extra week, to prepare for Doherty. And the Patriots have managed to split their first two games, winning at Pelham 35-28 before losing to Monroe 21-6. And this is the last game of the season, and against an Albany school. Following that game against Doherty, that'll be the last game of the season. That'll be the last game of the season for the Patriots. And at least against as far as playing against teams from Albany are concerned, because they'll go right into JHSA Region 1-4A action. And next week against America Sumter and Doherty, after facing off against Westover, will host Spencer out of Columbus. And another one of those measuring stick games in Crisp County. Looks like at 3-0 overall is the only team in GHSA Region 1-4A that even has a winning record right now. And then so it'll be another one of those Westover and Doherty will be one of those measuring stick games. One of those measuring stick games to see where those teams are, and as mentioned earlier, in Westover, and this is Westover's final non-region game, and before they get into Region 1-4A action, it'll be all non-region games at this point going forward. And how about some other games of interest involving Southwest Georgia teams? And the Cairo Syrup Makers are at home this Friday, September 8th against Bainbridge. And then and this is their third next door neighbor or arch rival that the Syrup Makers have faced in as many games. And it seemed like the jury's still out on the serve makers. And Cairo just crushed Thomasville 37-8. Then pitched a shutout over Thomas County Central 24-0. And they'll face a Bainbridge team that's managed to split its first two games, losing at Lee County 38-13. And then last week, defeated Lincoln out of Tallahassee, Florida, 43-33. And Lincoln was one of three teams from the Sunshine State that the Bearcats will face. And September 22nd, the Bearcats will host Sarasota, as well and that's on September 22nd. Then the following week, Bainbridge will play host to yet another team from Tallahassee, Rickards, spelled Rickards. So Bainbridge will be playing a very challenging non-region schedule before they get into Region 1-5A action in early October. And we got a lot of regions with just 5 teams. In regions 1-6, 5, triple, and now double A, thanks to the sudden unfortunate demise or closure of Albany High School, which was closed by the Dougherty County Board of Education, effective immediately, in a 4-3 vote on Saturday, June 6th of this year. So very unfortunate to see Albany High go. But you got Cairo hosting Bainbridge in the last non-region contest of the year. And serve makers will begin their 7-game Region 1-4A schedule on September 15th against Hardaway out of Columbus. And some let's see some other region games of interest. You got other games of interest, and this is a non-region. America Sumter is at Lee County, and another stern test for the Panthers against one of the best teams in Southwest Georgia, and arguably one of the best teams in the state. And we got all. And the Crisp County Cougars are off this week, and they'll return to action on September 15th, and against Rutland and the Worth County Rams. And 0-3 on the season, and managed to score 13, and 14 points respectively, and just 41 points, while surrendering 94 points in losses to Thomas County Central, Turner County, and Veterans respectively. And the Rams will be on the road this week, trying to get their first win under new head coach Ben Simmons, facing the Early County Bobcats with their new head coach in Joel Harvin. And then they'll host Thomasville the following week, and after a bye week. And the Rams play their final non-region game of the season on September 29th at Harris County. Open region play against Cook. So Worth County and Cook both sit at 0-3 on the year. In Worth County, and how about Mitchell County? And splitting their first 2 games, losing to Dougherty 18-14 to open the season, and then stomping Stewart County up in Lumpkin, Georgia, 47-0. And they'll host Miller County in yet another Region 1 Single A contest in Miller County, and had a bye last week after defeating Terrell County 34-18. That's the final score there. And the Green Waves will get a much-needed week off after dropping to 0-3 with a 48-0 loss to Pelham. And the Green Waves have been shut out twice so far this season. In Seminole County, coming off a tough loss to Early County. And they host Chattahoochee County. And Chattahoochee County pitched a shutout over Baconton Charter last week. And Baconton is off this week and will return home on September 15th against Miller County. And then I'm gonna wrap up this podcast with the GISA schedule. We got Deerfield Windsor sitting at 2-1 on the season so far, playing host to Westfield out of Perry, Georgia. And when Deerfield Windsor sitting at 2-1 overall, with wins over Trinity Christian out of Sharpsburg, Georgia, 26-16, and then shut out by North Florida Christian out of Tallahassee, Florida, 21-0. In North Florida Christian, and one of those perennial powers among small schools in Tallahassee. And I'm not sure about the other schools down there outside Lincoln and Rickards. And then since this podcast focuses primarily on Southwest Georgia schools, especially those around here in Albany, Dougherty County, surrounding areas. And but Deerfield did lose 21-0 to North Florida Christian last week, and Deerfield's coming off a win over Terrell Academy, and they'll face a Westfield squad that's just 1-2 on the season, and being shut out by Southland Academy 44-0, and Valwood 42-0. And Westfield did get their first win of the season, outlasting Bullock Academy 19-15 last week. And Terrell Academy and is the 1-2 on the season after their loss last week to Deerfield Windsor, and it doesn't get any easier to face the Southland Academy team. Is already off to a 4-0 start, and the Golden Raiders the Southland Academy out of Americus, Georgia, have already pitched 2 shutouts, including a 50-0 rout against Heritage last Friday. And we're going to see if in Tift area, and when Tift area was 3-0 on the season before being stomped by Gatewood 55-14 last week. And the Panthers out of tiny Chula, Georgia, have this week off, and before returning to action on September 15th. And they'll travel to Dawson to face Terrell Academy and the Southwest Georgia Academy Warriors, or SGA, out of Damascus, Georgia. Got back to the 500 mark after rolling past Edgewood Academy out of Elmore, Alabama. And out of Elmore, Alabama. And this week, the SGA will hit the road going to Woodbury, Georgia, in the west central part of the state. Woodbury, Georgia, roughly halfway between Atlanta and Columbus. to face the Wildcats of Flint River Academy. And let's see, try to fit in one more team before calling it a night here. And Westwood has won back-to-back games to start the season, and crushing First Presbyterian Christian 59-6, outlasting Windsor Academy 13-9. Lost back-to-back games since then, and getting and being stomped by Southland 44-6. And last week, and Westwood lost a heartbreaker at home to Georgia Military College 28-21. And one more thing before wrapping things up, and you'll be interested in Hurricane Irma. A quick weather update. In a Category 5 hurricane, and it was winds of up to 180 miles per hour, and they could in the reports I've been been listening to, and say that Hurricane Irma might strike the Florida coast by late Sunday night, early Monday morning, might hit landfall around Florida, and then where Irma will go from there remains to be seen, and depending on what happens, and there may or may not be a whole lot of games being played, and there might be a lot of postponements or cancellations in store for next week. So we're just gonna keep an eye on that. But in any case, that's going to wrap up this edition of the High School Football Roundup podcast for Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. And visit the Southwest Georgia Network website at www.southwestgeorgianetwork.com. That's southwestgeorgianetwork.com. And for some short form podcasts and written content. And then also follow the Southwest Georgia Network on Twitter at SWGA Network, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel for more. And once you get to the Southwest Georgia Network Twitter feed, click there. Remember to click subscribe. Click the red rectangular button to subscribe, and then click the dark, once you're subscribed, and click that bell in the dark gray to get all notifications of any live webcast or podcast, live podcast or webcast. And so remember to subscribe to the Southwest Georgia Network on YouTube. And that's going to do it for this edition of the High School Football Roundup podcast. And this has been your host, Walter Johnson, saying good night, good morning, and or good afternoon, wherever you might be. And thank you for listening.